Hello, this is Tom, aka Gedeon here for Tabletop Tap Room. Recently, we did a video called the Gygaxian Distribution of Magic Items. And I used the Moldvay basic rules and Keep on the Borderlands as a microcosm that was very controllable, very limited, because, like, if I had used the DMG from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, we're talking about a list of, check my number here, 369 magic items, not counting the artifacts. I left the artifacts out when I totaled up the magic items in the DMG. Just because I really feel like, the artifacts are just so big that they deserve that they just don't need to be like a random thing. They really need to be something that the game master has well thought out to place in their campaign system. So I've completely left them out for the number crunching that I've done for this particular video. And I came down to a proposal of 50% consumable magic items after analyzing what Gary did with Keep on the Borderlands. A 10%, 11 to 10. Keep on the Borderlands had 12%, but I was recommending 10. Just because honestly, these are rules of thumb. So you might go up a little, you might go down a little. It whatever suits what you're doing. And introducing non-standard, not from the book, from other sources, wherever you get them or you create them yourself, magic items. Keep on the Borderland had about 11 to 12% for those, and so I was recommending a 10% rule of thumb number for the Gygaxian distribution of magic items based off of Keep on the Borderlands. But I felt like, we really should do this for other levels of playing. For instance, I've now done it for the Expert set and the Isle of Dread, which was the bundled module with the Expert rules. And I've done it I happen to have L1 Secret of Bone Hill from Len Kafka, and I did an AD&D analysis of the breakdown of magic items. And we'll look at that with this video. But before I get too deep, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. And don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon and help me build the channel. Now let's go right to a screen share. Here is my little chart that I have compiled now after doing this analysis of Moldvay Basic, Keep on the Borderlands, Expert, Isle of Dread, and AD&D DMG, and L1 Secret of Bone Hill. I chose L1 Secret of Bone Hill simply because it's what I could lay my hands on. I could not locate my copy of the Village of Hamlet. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the other room where there's a lot of just stuff stacked and put in boxes, put away, and just not readily available. So if anybody has a PDF of Village of Hamlet you want to loan me, I'll do that analysis. I really felt like that was the module to do this analysis with, because it's a nice starting module, and it would compare well to Keep on the Borderlands, because you have that strategic environment of the village, and then what's outside the village for the players to explore, and where they have a license to murder hobo everything outside the village. So I thought that would be a nice comparison. So but just to get this done, I did L1 Secret of Bone Hill, which actually does have a strategic environment, the Castle of Resford, where you do not expect the players to go murder hobo. So I did not, a little caveat, I did not total up or account for the magic items in there. However, it's in looking at the module, it does feel like it's intended for the players to be searching and exploring the castle, because there are like little secret compartments and magic items that are not somebody's possession, and things like a bottle of genie summoning is there. There's a secret compartment with the deck of many things in the L1 Secret of Bone Hill. So it does feel like it is intended, but I have completely left out the castle and not left it in here, which is okay because there was, if you notice here, total magic items found in Secret of Bone Hill is 80, and that includes nothing that's in the castle. So comparing expert to Moldve basic, we've got swords are still 20%, and weapons and armor. Well, weapons and armor is now split, miscellaneous. So you get 10% in expert are armor and 5% are weapons. That's more of like a 50-50 split on the basic table. You have for potions, 20% are potions, whereas the 25 in Moldve basic. Scrolls are 30%, with a caveat that a lot of these scrolls are actually treasure maps. Some of them are treasure maps that just lead to coins. Some of them are treasure maps that actually lead to magic items. Treasure maps are not inherently magical, but I did not exclude them from the number crunching. I just counted everything up and went with it. Rings are still 5%. Wands and rods and staffs are still 5%. And miscellaneous items are still 5%. Total magic items for the expert rulebook are 178, and 55% of them are consumables. Now, there's a little bit of fudging with this consumable number. For instance, there's a couple of things in the rods and staffs that don't really count as consumables, like, say, the snake staff. However, in the miscellaneous weapons, there are things that do count as consumables, and that would be like your +1 arrows, +1 quarrels for the crossbow. So those things would. I just ignored the miscellaneous weapons that did not account for the arrows, and I just treated all rods and staffs and wands as consumables. It's kind of a wash. It's a few from this list wouldn't be counted. Few from this list would be counted. We're just really talking, honestly, a rule of thumb percentage number here. So for the expert, it's 55% are consumables, and 8.8 or 9% of them are the cursed negative items. Now, in Isle of Dread, if you found everything in the Isle of Dread, there's not really a strategic. Well, there is the villages behind the wall, the primitive villagers, and they don't really have much in the way of magic items. So, doesn't matter whether or not I counted the stuff in there. I just counted everything in the Isle of Dread. So if you find everything, it's 14% are swords, 7% are armor, 17% are miscellaneous weapons. So, some of these numbers do change. 28% are potions, 14% are scrolls, 10% are rings. There's actually 3 rings. And I think one of the things you could do is you could have like a journal entry talking about the 3 rings of so-and-so that were lost on the Isle of Dread. So the players know there are 3 rings to be found. One of them, I don't think they'll find at all because of where it is, but who knows? I mean, they could be using a wand of magic detection, and they'll be like, there's something magical in the corpse of that dinosaur. So they cut it open, and they'll find in the belly the ring on a hand, and it's been eaten by the dinosaur. So that would be one. That's one of the things I would do so that the players know, oh, there are 3 rings to be found out there. We should really look for this. There were 0 wands, staffs, and rods. And for miscellaneous magic items, it was 7%. So the total magic found on the Isle of Dread was 29, 42% were consumables, and 10% were negative. There were no non-standard magic items introduced. So again, these numbers, as a rule of thumb, do hold up. 42% is kind of close to 50% consumables. And the 10% cursed and negative items did hold up as a rule of thumb. Now, looking at Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and this was a lot of counting on my part, the breakdown is when you go to page 121 in the DMG, It's 20% are potions, 15% are scrolls, rings are 5%, same as across the board for BX. Rods, wands, and staves, again, 5%. Miscellaneous magic is 15%. Now that's up because there's like 5 D100 tables of miscellaneous magic items. And then one entry on there is artifacts, and so then you go to a special table of just artifacts. Again, I left the artifacts out completely. So the miscellaneous is 15%. Armor is 15%. Swords are 11%, and miscellaneous weapons are 14%. You have a total in the DMG of 369 magic items, excluding the actually, that's 368 magic items because you have that one listing that was artifacts, and I accidentally counted that. So 368. My numbers will be a little off here because it was all computed on 369, but it's not that big a deal. Total magic items in the DMG, 40% are consumable, a little down, 13% are cursed, negative items. So again, the 40 to 50% consumable, as a rule of thumb, it holds. And again, with the cursed negative items, 13% of the entire list is cursed negative items. And there's actually probably more of the consumables. There are some things in the miscellaneous magic items like dust of disappearance, dust of this. Those would be a consumable with just a few uses and then it's gone, that you would use it up. And there's probably more magic arrows and magic whorls in the DMG list. So there's quite possibly more consumables in the DMG list. So this number, this 40%, is a little bit low. But I feel like, as a rule of thumb, 40 to 50 really works well. So now, looking at the secret of Bone Hill, you got 39% potions now. So it's a big number. And there's one room where somebody was like experimenting with mixing potions. And there's 8 of them that are good, but there's 16 of them that are toxic, poisonous. So that actually was kind of something that was chosen by the writer of the module. And they did it on purpose as just kind of a fun experimental thing to screw with the players a little bit. Some of those potions are unmixed, but a bunch of them are mixed, of the good ones. So it'll be like, long life and speed. Well, mixed together, or one thing and vampire control mixed together. So you get so you get some weird effects going on with that. And I think that was just about having fun with screwing around and keeping the players off of their feet. So technically, that would actually, those ones that were mixed potions would be non-standard, and that should actually bump up my number. My number of non-standard is 6%, so it's artificially low. It probably needed to be higher. And if you add in those mixed potions, it probably bumps it up closer to the rule of thumb that I came up with for basic with Keep on the Borderlands of 10%. So it bumps it up to there. The scrolls was only 1%, surprisingly. It was only basically one scroll. 9% were rings, 4% were rods, wands, and staffs, 11% were the miscellaneous magic items, 14% was armor, 4% were swords, and 13% were miscellaneous magic items. So you had a total of 80 found out in the wild outside of the strategic area, the castle, and then 23%. This is a very high percentage, and that's because of all those toxic potions that were mixed that ended up being toxic. And this is actually a table in the DMG about, if you mix potions, you roll on this table. There's a lot of negative effects, and every once in a while you get some positive effects of, you've discovered a new formula by you mixing these 2 potions. So it's artificially high. I still think the 10% is a 10% curse negative items is a good rule of thumb. Adjust it up and down to suit yourself. So the numbers have held across BX and the DMG and one AD&D module of 50. I would say 50% consumables and 10% negative cursed of the whole total. And again, you'd throw in a good 10% non-standard magic items. Now, a lot of the non-standard magic items that Len Lakofka put into Secret of Bone Hill were actually standard magic items from the list, but he changed a little something. He added an extra thing to it. So I counted those as non-standard. And of course, you had the mixed potions. That's always an option that you could do. Players find a potion, but it's actually 2 mixed potions, and here's what it does. That would be considered a non-standard item. So this rough rule of thumb, this Gygaxian that I've labeled the Gygaxian distribution of magic items, seems to bear out across a couple of editions and a small handful of modules. And you can play with these numbers. You can play with these percentages and say, you know, I want a lower magic world. So, you know, 75% of all the magic items found will be consumables. And maybe there'll be a cap, like Len Lakofka included 80, and I didn't even count everything in the module because of leaving out the castle. And clearly there were some magic items in there that were intended for the players to find, like Deck of Many Things, which might qualify as a negative cursed item because of some of the things it does. Certainly, but you might put a cap and say no more than 20 in this adventure, you know, or no more than 15, and 75% of them are going to be consumable. Well, that is certainly going to keep it very low magic, you know, keep the magic down. There was a statement in the DMG that implied a well-run campaign would be a little bit more stringent in giving out magic items. And this is written by Gary. But Gary, in turn, gave out 30-some-odd magic items in the Keep on the Borderlands. I don't know that I would call that stringent. I kind of think like that was pretty, you know, a pretty good number. There were less given out. Well, that 29, 33 to 29 on Isle of Dread. 29, yeah. I did have some issues with the Isle of Dread, like the Sea Dragon didn't have any magic items. And I felt if anything should have a magic item, it should be a dragon, right? But again, it's Sea Dragon. It doesn't match any of the chromatic dragons. So it's kind of like an oddball, you know, dragon. So I guess maybe that's why the Sea Dragon didn't have a magic item in its lair in the Isle of Dread, which I remember back in the day, we dove for the thinking, oh, Sea Dragon, let's go. He's going to have magic. We dove for that and took on the Sea Dragon, and there's no magic. I was like totally BS over that. I was like, what? So, you know, I remember being angry way back. Certainly, you can actually play with these percentages to modify them to create a more, stingy, low magic type of setting, if that's what you're going for. I would certainly think that that's possible. But again, my rule of thumb is 40 to 50% consumables, 10% curse negative, keep players on their feet, keep them on their toes, and then some non-standard so that they don't assume they know, oh, pair of boots. This must be the elven boots because we're playing BX, and that's the only boots on the, magic item list. No. we're introducing other non-standard magic items. You may not know what this item is just by looking at it, going, well, it's magical and it's boots. Probably elven boots. And I've always wanted a pair, so whoop. Now, we might introduce dancing boots from the DMG, from AD&D into basic, and just to screw with you a little bit. So certainly the non-standard items and the cursed items are there to keep the players on their toes, so they don't assume they just know what something is. Keep them honest, keep them honest, make them research what a magic item is, take it to a wizard, pay for him to research it. Oh, this is what it is, and here's the command word for it. I think that's a good thing for the game. So this is Tom for Tabletop Taproom with our Gygaxian magic distribution rule of thumb. And it's certainly playing out, and I may just do the entire B series of modules to be able to chart boom, 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 boom. This module bucks the system, but all the rest support, that might be an interesting study. I don't know. We'll look into that for sure. I might have to get some PDFs off of drive-through to fully be able to do that. But again, thanks for watching the video. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. Don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon. And keep on gaming. Do it with some magic items.